I'm going down to the library, picking out a book, check it in, check it out. Gonna say hi to the dictionary, picking out a book, check it in, check it out.
All right. Hi, this week I'm here with Jeff Hebl. Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for coming.
Hey, Dee. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. So the reason I wanted to get you over here is I see your car out front between the library and City Hall every single day. And so I was kind of laughing about that with you at one point. You are considered a part-time mayor.
Correct.
And I am so curious how much time that allegedly takes and how much time it really takes, because I see your vehicle out there all the time.
Right.
So I'm just so curious.
Well, yeah, it's part-time, and the salary definitely reflects part-time. You don't do any of this stuff for the pay. You do it for what's best for the city. You know, in the beginning, there's a lot to learn. I have the advantage of having served 12 years on the school board, so I know how to conduct a meeting. I know how meetings are run, Robert's Rules of order. But you know, some days are long, some weeks are long. Sometimes I may not go in at all for a day or two. But with social media and cell phones, I have my phone set up that any calls to my city hall number go right to my phone.
Oh.
So the voicemail, and I tried to commit to and have so far succeeded in getting back to anybody that either emails me, messages me on Facebook, or calls me within 24 hours. You know, the mayors before me, I know Ron Carls, I think he darn near worked 40 hours a week minimum. I mean, he was here all the time. Diane, I'd see her car quite often, but you know, I didn't really pay attention.
Yeah, I would say similarly. I did work with Diane as well, and you have done the same where you're so easy to get a hold of.
Right.
And again, I mean, I think it's amazing in this small town. Like, I love that we can, in this small community, that we have that access to our government. It's just hilarious that you're considered part-time when I am certain that you guys are putting in round the clock.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is having been a police officer for 28 years, you're on call.
Right.
7 days a week,
Habits.
365, 24 hours. So I've kind of just taken that into being mayor, and you know, what we have to understand, whether you know, even yourself, city employees, elected officials, we work for the citizens, and we provide a service.
Right.
And those services are across the board, and you know, taxes aren't cheap, and people expect to get answers. And I think that we owe it to our constituents to be able to get back to them within 24 to 48 hours at a maximum. in your case, in City Hall, the weekends are the exception, but not for me,
Yeah.
I just feel that if somebody has a concern over the week, and I get them, I get instant messages from, it's surprising the number of instant messaging I get on Facebook, there's excess snow over here,
Oh,
but.
it's not surprising, Jeff. We talked about this when you were talking about running for mayor, and
Sure.
I was expressing my, respect for that,
Right.
it's easy to say what's wrong,
Right.
and it's harder to come do the work and be the face of that.
Right.
And, it's just one of those, like, you understand as a police officer as well as a member of the community, you'll be at the grocery store and people,
Oh, yeah.
you don't get to wear your like personal hat anymore
Right.
in the community. You are mayor, and
Right.
I'm gonna bring my, complaints, and I
Sure.
wish compliments sometimes too,
Sure. Yeah.
to you
Yeah.
at the grocery store, at the restaurants. You're never not on call.
Well, having been the cooking cop, I get people when I'm at the grocery store asking me what's for dinner. And they look
Oh.
at my cart for maybe that secret ingredient that I might be using.
That's so funny. That's so funny. And almost feels invasive.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, when you're a cop, it goes with the job,
Public figures.
In
Yeah.
bigger cities, cops are just a face, but in the smaller communities, everybody knows, everybody knows what you do, so.
Yeah.
I've embraced it. I've never had an issue. I've never had anybody really go across the line in either as mayor or as an officer. People will say, "I know you're not on duty," kind of a
Yeah.
thing. But,
Oh, they're everybody's kind about it.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, that's good. You had mentioned that there is a lot to learn. You know a lot coming in, or you knew a lot from serving on boards before. But what do you think, you've been doing this about a year now, right? Almost
Just
a year.
just shy. Yeah.
What are some of the things that you have learned in the process?
Number one, not everybody voted for me. Two is I'll never make everybody happy.
That's the best lesson. I told you that one before.
Yeah,
Never.
Yeah, you need thicker skin than being a cop, I really believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do take it personal. Some of the things I made it clear when we were here in last March that I was going to turn over every stone. Nothing was going to be off limits. The police consolidation, that was a huge issue. I stand behind that proposal. I've been accused of it being personal. I was able to get Calumet County officials to come up with a minimum of $1 million savings over 5 years to be vindictive or to get even. That wasn't the case. What I wanted to do was try to provide an alternative to a service that worked. However, I didn't feel, and if people would have asked, aldermen were asked, and 10 times out of 10 people would respond with, "Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that." I wish people would have asked. What I am surprised, you see it at a state and national level, and now I've seen it locally, that the narrative can be so skewed, the information can be so blatantly false, but people aren't afraid to say it to keep their side at the top, to keep them winning. And the whole deal was what's best for the city. The bottom line is there would have been no change in service. The level of service would have remained the same, 24-hour coverage, everything that you currently have, but it would have been enhanced with the deeper abilities that the county can provide. The only difference you would have noticed was brown uniforms and silver cars. But that's over. The council voted to go with option 2 to rebuild our police department. Some members are skeptical that we didn't really solve anything with that decision, but my focus right now is to back the Police and Fire Commission 150% in trying to find a new police chief, rebuild the department, and move on from there. That idea, that proposal, that it wasn't just me. An alderman had proposed this. It was in the Tri-County, the Holstein Report, or whatever it was called back in the 80s. An alderman had proposed police consolidation. Alderman Bosma had talked about this years ago. It was on people's lips. I just was the one that pushed it forward to see if it was something that could work. I believe it would have worked, but I think a referendum would have been surprisingly not what the small group that attended a lot of those meetings would have hoped for, but we move on.
Yeah.
We're moving on. The next issue, I'm really, before I was mayor, I was real pessimistic about the city and its outlook. And now as mayor, I'm an eternal optimist. There's a lot of good things going on that just waiting to, waiting to happen. I think the Tecumseh news last week with the funding that we've acquired, and we're moving forward. There's some prospective businesses that we've been working with. 2 of them I found on Facebook.
Yeah.
They reached out. I saw that they were looking for a location, and I hit them up. I said, "Hey, I'm the mayor. Come talk to us." And we
Yeah.
met with 2 of those individuals, and hopefully something will transpire there, and we'll see it come out positive for us.
Yeah, I feel like in thinking of all of what you just said, what the lesson, and I do think this was something I learned getting into public service and then sort of communicated or conveyed to you as you were running, is that one of the things I think you learn is that often there's going to be a perception of what you're doing, and that might not align with what you're doing.
Right.
And it is difficult. There are going to be decisions in any public role that are unpopular or that not everyone is pleased with. And then you have to continue to be the face of them. And whether they go one way or the other, the work must go on and the show goes on.
Right.
And then you move on to the next thing. And that is really, I think that has been, for me, one of the biggest challenges throughout my career was
Right.
learning to not take things personal,
Right.
that I am making decisions that people will be emotional about. I find children and money.
Right.
If it involves children or money, you're going to have divided opinions on it. That is just all there is to it. And it is tough. So as I said before, I respect anybody who gets in the role, and I'm glad that you already came to the optimism. I think it took me a couple of years to
Right.
get to the place of being like, always realizing there's new work to be done on the horizon.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't matter what happened this time. I'm going to keep working. So, yeah, the Tecumseh thing is so exciting.
Right.
I was going to ask what is something that's on the horizon that you're excited about or passionate about it?
Just the fact that we're going to demolish it.
Yeah.
People have weighed in. Why didn't you let the county just keep it? And then have them sit on it for 30 years. One of the things as mayor, I believe that we really need to look at properties that are below, standards of what people expect their neighbors to. There's some properties that some of the aldermen didn't really want to get in the business of raising a property, but when you look at, we've got one down on Main Street that has been that way for years. There's a hole in the roof that keeps getting bigger, and my attitude has been that we owe it not only to the citizens because it reflects New Holstein as a whole, but especially those neighbors that have to live next to it. New Holstein residents take pride in their property, and
That meeting where council and you had invited us as department heads to sort of throw out our visions for the community, and it was brought up, addressing some, I think Casey had brought up, addressing some of those properties that are on the main street that might be more unsightly.
Right.
And I said, as an outsider coming in, you look at all of these well cared for, you're one block off of the main street or some on the main street there that are just beautiful, incredible, historic properties, well maintained.
Right.
And then those few can just really damage the overall look. That zoning stuff is so hard though. I mean, we're talking about that in the city of Chilton as well. And
Sure.
yeah, so you're thinking maybe the city looking at, how does the city address things like that?
Well, there's ordinances about that cover it. We need, there was a gentleman in Kiel that addressed it in a letter to the editor about how, you have these ordinances on the books, and they're there for a purpose. And blighted property is on there, and I just think that we not only owe it to the residents of New Holstein as a whole, but those immediately affected by it. Because if the property owner to the north or the south is beautifully maintained, but the house next to it is in such disrepair, like the one on Main, they have no recourse. They're expecting us, the city government, to do something about that. And I just feel so strongly that we need to do something about that. When I became mayor, one of the things I did was I met with the Chilton, Keel, and Brillion mayors just to see what works and what doesn't work, and see if we couldn't collaborate on other things. And I asked them specifically about raising properties, and I think 2 out of the 3 or 3 out of the 3, they had funds set aside so that when that became an issue, they were prepared for it. Where right now, we don't have that. We would have to dip into or find the funding for it. But I think we owe it to the residents immediately around the property and the city as a whole. But it's not like, hey, the one thing is mowing your lawn. It's like as soon as I mow my lawn, I swear my neighbor next door gets up, goes his.
Oh my gosh!
You see that around the whole city.
That Stepford Wives scene. That is Suburbia. I mean, that is who we are. It's like we have the same thing that goes on in our neighborhood. It's definitely not a race, but it's like, well, mine's going to look terrible now. And it's the worst, let me tell you, when you live between a couple of retarees who can make, I'm a full-time and a mom and all. It's like, we can't keep up with you.
Right. No,
that's funny.
It's New Holstein residents, they take pride in their community and everything. I just think that, people expect us to, they expect something. When I started in Keel and I was there for a year, and I can remember New Holstein was the place to be, and then I moved to New Holstein. I worked in New Holstein for 28, 29 years, and all of a sudden Chilton and Keel are growing, and New Holstein's going backwards. But, we need to be optimistic. We need to do things. And, I've made it clear that I believe in term limits. I don't think people should be able to rot in a position because you become complacent. You're basically making decisions how you feel it should be, our federal government. I don't think our founding fathers ever expected them to be able to get a pension and lifetime insurance and make a career out of it. They would come in from the farms or their businesses for a couple of weeks, take care of business, and go back. Now, they're there for months on end. They got residents paid for the taxpayers. So I want to get in and get as much done as I can do in a certain time period, and then turn it over to the next mayor.
So you mentioned being optimistic, and if we're going backwards or even just staying, what is it in addition to optimism that what does it take to move forward? What are some of the things? Maybe the flip side of that question, or it's both in one, are there barriers to making progress, moving forward? How do we get our city from here to there?
Well, it seems to me like, let's take Keel and even Chilton, for example. They're not afraid to take, a couple of steps backwards to go a couple more steps forward. Where, I think New Holstein has been almost too conservative in the sense that we may need to be a little bit more aggressive in how we approach things. The council, just like any elected position, it's time consuming. It's a thankless job. You have to appreciate what these men and women have done on whether it's the school board or the city council, the county board, the town boards, whatever it might be. But you've got to be able to make some tough decisions, and to just go into these meetings and just consistently all in favor say aye and be 7-0 or whatever, 8-0, and not go outside the box isn't going to get us anywhere. And the thing is I wasn't really the most flattering towards City Hall before the election, and now being in there, I do see the hard work that's done in both the utilities and the city hall side, the street department, the police department, the utility, the library,
Thank you.
everybody is doing the best they can with the resources that they're given. But I don't like the criticism that goes, there's a lot of optimistic, positive people in New Ulster, but there's always those pessimists that as soon as something's posted, there's a negative. Why aren't we doing this, or why aren't we doing that? One of the things with our city administrator, she gets criticized for, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I know the previous city clerk, I'd hear the same things. But you have to understand what their job description is and what it entails and what they are responsible for doing. And a lot of these things that people expect them to be doing are not in their wheel, their scope of employment. But, just Casey Langenfeld, she's committed to the community. Her and her husband and their partner have purchased the old E-Light, and they've got big plans for it. If she didn't have the city's best interest in mind, she wouldn't have purchased that property.
Right.
And it intends to do what their plans are. I think, if the plans, and I believe they will, go the distance, it's going to be beautiful. It's
Totally.
going to be the gem that building once was.
Yeah.
When it was closed, and I had the opportunity to. We'd get complaints that, somebody was in there or something, and I'd get the opportunity to, as a police officer, you get to go to the bowels of a building like Tecumseh,
Yeah.
Having been in there the last couple of years, the people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into that building over that businesses over the years would roll over in their graves or just be sick to see the decay and damage that's been allowed. But
Right.
to go through the old E-Light and go behind the stage where stuff was written on the walls 50, 60 years ago,
Right.
when they had, somebody loves somebody with a heart, just
Right.
all the cool
The
stuff.
history in the community, the community history is in those places.
And I'm a history buff. I like that kind of stuff. And, New Holstein has a lot of history. You walk into City Hall next time, and I don't know if you've seen it, but behind the girls' desks on the wall, there's about a dozen or so or more pictures of all these entrepreneurs over in the 50s, 60s, 70s that were in New Holstein. Wow.
Yeah.
And, there's so much history, the Langenfelds.
You know what though, when
Paulies.
you're saying this, and this is triggering something for me, it's like, entrepreneur is risk taking.
Right.
You really are just throwing your faith in that it's going to work
Right.
out, and that is when our community thrives.
Right.
Through those taking big risks and making big moves. And I think
Right.
you were kind of saying it. I think we stagnate when we are afraid to take big, bold moves, So, maybe, and I think that's what it's about. I mean, even you're talking about the Langenfelds purchasing they call it the Magdalena now?
Yeah,
Is that
that's what it is.
correct? I think I just never
I
know.
didn't want to blow the pronunciation.
I know, me neither.
E-Light, I get that.
I'm notorious for doing it too.
Sure.
But that's just an example of like taking a risk, a personal risk to try to advance the community. And so maybe more of that. I just wonder how the city can take an active role. And that's to me, that is the big question with many answers, complex answers, no answers, is how does city and city government inspire people to do that and take those risks and continue to make our community advance. So
Right.
I'm so glad to see that you have a lot of optimism about it and that you have a new perspective on that some of the criticism or the some of the thoughts of how the city was functioning and operating to come in and then see it and identify some of those same barriers and see what we see, that we are everybody here, I believe, works hard, cares.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at, there's there's several businesses that are committed, and they're looking beyond the pessimism. You got Honeymoon Acres that draws from such a wide radius. The Altona, the grocery store, Belky and Associates, A1 Polishing, CRW, Metco. They're all willing to keep going. AmeriQuip, I talked to the president. He says they're not going anywhere. The buildings they do have in the city, the biggest fear is that we're going to lose another one. I made the promise of visiting all the businesses within the first 100 days. Well, the COVID put a big squash on that. I have been able to reach out and meet with quite a few. I still have some big ones on the list to get to see where they're at, to see where, see what we can do. But I think there's potential with the airport. I'd like to see us, grow that into a bigger asset to the community. I hope that the ATV, UTV golf cart thing, takes off. We haven't seen golf carts because that would be kind of nuts right now. But there's been over a dozen permits taken out for the ATVs alone.
Yeah.
I'd like to see us. I've already talked to the FAA about getting a path out to the airport, so when we do have the Cub fly in, that we can get some golf carts in, rent them out to the individuals that are there for the week to come into town, take advantage of all our businesses. We've had a couple of other groups that have inquired, have used the airport, so if we can expand on that. I'd like to reach out to EAA and see if we can't get a bigger turnout from them. We are a puddle jump away from, we've got everything.
Right.
Camping, the facility, I'm sure all the hotels, all the places over there are booked. You come over here with your plane, you can spend the week, rent, you've got the hotel, you've got the Best Western. There's so many options out there that, I just want to expand on and try to, I've got the energy. I'm retired, but not. I think I'm busier now with my 3 jobs than I was when I was working full time.
That's like so classic. Take on more
Right?
in retirement. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. I think our construction's about to resume, so I feel like we're going to get overwhelmed. I am so appreciative of your time. I have usually I ask a couple of personal questions. Maybe I'll stick with just, if you could have, you obviously love food.
Sure.
The cooking cup. No, that's not how I meant it. The cooking cup. You're known for loving food. If you could have a meal with anyone, who would it be, and what would be served?
I've often wondered if that would ever be a question on anything, and so I had to think long and hard. I probably should say my wife.
Well, you get to have a meal. You get to have several meals with her.
But I do have Brett Favre.
Oh, that's fun.
Brett Favre, and what would be served? I don't know.
He'd be raucous.
Yeah, but I'd have to include my mom because she's just as big a fan as I am. I can eat anything. I really can. I think I can cook just about anything. Probably we'd go with something Cajun.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah,
Southern roots.
Southern. But yeah, if it was with my wife, if I didn't mention her, she'd probably make me cook tonight.
That is a very fair. The I would say premise of the question is someone different than.
Right. Sure. Sure.
So, apologies to your wife, but Brett Favre's a good answer.
Yeah.
I feel like he would be like you would feel like you knew him immediately.
Oh,
Doesn't he
yeah.
seem like that type of guy where he's just like a down home country
Oh,
boy?
yeah. He could be sitting next to you in the bar having a beer. And
Right.
then, oh, hey.
I really feel like that. Feel like you know celebrities.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. Well, thank you so much
Sure,
for your
sure.
time, for
Appreciate
coming
it.
here today, for all of your answers. It's fun because I knew you were running back in, February. We had sat down to
Sure,
talk about
sure.
doing the mayoral debate. And so now a year later, we're following up now that you've been in the role.
Sure.
And I think everything I imagined for you it's like coming to fruition.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
amazing.
I do have a Facebook page, a mayor page, that every now and then I ask the residents, what are their thoughts on this? What are their thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Because, my number one goal is to try to make New Holstein more resident friendly in the sense that, you know, they pay a lot of taxes and, you know, just simple things like winter parking can be a pain in the rear for anybody that has college kids or have a lot of cars. And, you know, we don't get the snowstorms we used to get.
Right.
You know, things like brush pickup, you know, at once a month. You know, you've got the little old lady that, you know, jams everything in her little car or, you know, can't pick up and take down to the dump. We should be able to provide that once a month, you know,
Right.
and without creating, you know, I don't want it, it's got to be specific and it's got to be, you know, you can't put the stuff out at the curb on Monday when we don't pick up to the following Monday
Right.
because you got to respect your neighbors. You don't want it to look, you know, trashy. So working on things like that, but I do post things, you know, ask questions and people aren't afraid to respond.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you're inviting, it's wonderful, and also you
Sure.
invite,
Sure.
and you're proclaiming that you can contact you via Facebook, phone, email, and
Sure.
you'll respond within 24 to 48 hours.
Sure, sure. And I've been out
No.
mowing my lawn and people will pull up and ask questions. That's okay.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Well, thank you
Thanks,
again,
Dee.
Jeff.
Yep.
You have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. Hey, it's the director here, Dee Hankins, and it's my week for staff favorites. And once again, I'm going to go with something non-traditional. Last time I mentioned podcasts and was really plugging our service of tech support or tech tutoring. And this week I wanted to discuss a couple of the things that I check out from here that I take home at least once a week. I'm taking home something non-traditional to use with my 3-year-old daughter, in fact. And so the first is one of our STEM toys. It's the Caterpillar Twist. And she loves these things. They're like so easy. So I kind of recommend them to parents and grandparents. So if you have like your grandkids in town, and I have brought 4 of these home at once, and then when the neighbor kids come over, my 3-year-old and the 4-year-old, 8-year-old, and 11-year-old neighbor kids play with them as well. So they're better for young kids, but really all ages. And you can see all the kids have to do is turn these little things, and it basically codes in what the caterpillar is going to do and which way it's going to turn or whether it's going to just sing. And once it's coded in, they set it on the floor, they hit play, and it starts going. And what I have found really fun is I put something in the middle of the floor, and then I have all the kids try to get the closest to it. So then they kind of code in what they think the path will be to get closest to the center of the floor. And then they pull them back and try again. And so it's really fun, like problem solving, and I love these things. And the other thing that I have brought home for my 3-year-old, surprisingly, is one of our spatzel makers. Oh, I forgot that the caterpillar keeps talking, and he's like, hey, come play with me. So I have to turn it off. So we have cake pans, we have a bunch of like cooking utensils, and we have a spatzel maker, and it is unbelievably putsy and fun. And so it has a little recipe on the back, and that works really well. It's just a cup of flour, a 1/4 cup milk, 2 eggs, and salt. Who doesn't have that stuff at home? So I bring this home sometimes on a weeknight, and Louise is my daughter's name. Louise and I will follow the recipe. I'll let her measure and pour into the bowl and mix. So she does all that. And then it's just this little machine, and you plop the stuff in there, and you do this over a pan of boiling water. So she can do all of it. Obviously, with the boiling water, I'm quite cautious, but I have taught her about steam. And the little spatzel drop in and boil. And then we get a little frying pan and we put some butter in there. So she can do it from start to finish. And then she's made dinner, and it's so fun and rewarding, and it's free to try. And when we have it at home, we actually make quite a few batches just because it's delicious. So those are my favorites, and I hope that you come in and try something. Thank you.
I'm going down to the library, picking out a book, check it in, check it out. Gonna say hi to the dictionary, picking out a book, check it in, check it out. I'm going down to the library.